All right. This is our Loose Figures Through Shape and Flow watercolor workshop. And you've been provided a PDF handout, which is just part of this either event or part of the video you're watching. It is provided in one of the links. And also, the tracing method has also been provided for you in a link to be able to transfer these images beforehand onto paper. And what I did in the tutorial, it's about 7 minutes long, as I showed you how I make my own carbon paper, basically graphite paper, with scribbling on a pencil in the back. And then I can press down and then, trace over this, and then voila, we have a drawing. Or you can freehand it, if you want, or you can choose your own reference today for this workshop that we're doing in watercolor. I really like the looseness of these figures that we're going to be looking at today. And this is one of the images that we're going to actually paint today along with. And you can see this one is actually not a finished painting even, so you can make what you want of this little wall or easel or whatever this artist is working on right now. You can fill in the paint brushes or leave them the way I've got them. But the point is the figure today. So the figure on these, and you can substitute your own, the hair color of your choice, the skin tone of your choice, things like that. But I'm going to be talking about the way that the looseness and the flow of these colors are done in large part wet into wet. And I'm going to show you a couple of things about that to have that lovely looseness, that crisp little line, the way that it drew the paint dried around her arm color. You can see that very trademark watercolor look. And that is achieved by leaving things alone after they're on there. It looks absolutely magical after it's dry. While it's drying, it looks like doggy doo-doo. It just does. Okay. So just know that ahead of time. See this lovely little hard, crisp line of darkened paint right around the edges of that area. And people go, ooh, I can feel the relaxation. I can just sense the water and the flow and the movement. And it's so graceful and it's relaxing to look at. It reminds me of a stream or something. But as an artist, when you're making this right here is all one shape that I got wet and dropped a blob of purple into and dropped a blob of blue into. And who knows what's going on here? Honestly, I have no idea. There might be some yellow or peach or something going on. But I'm telling you, while it's wet, you want to move it, you want to fix it, you want to try to guide it. And I'm just telling you, we're going to get into that. You'll hear it from me a few times. Leave it alone. Let it do its thing. And so that's kind of the biggest secret of watercolor. To make something look magical and relaxing is almost a stressful process until you get used to leaving it alone. All right. So that's part of the thing. Same with this shape down here. It was done at a different time. Maybe an hour later, this dark purple thingy was done. Again, one shape, dropped a blob of dark here, a blob of dark here, blobs of dark here, made sure it was a little more concentrated dark down here. And then what did I do with it? Left it alone. So same thing with this pants area right here. You just got to leave it alone. So we'll get into that. Therefore, we're going to be going back and forth between two different photo references today that I've got that I sent in your the link that you can download and print for yourself. One looks like this, one looks like this. Feel free to just do one or the other. You don't have to do both of these things, but I will be doing both today. I'll be little on this one, put this one aside, little on this one, put that aside, come back to this one. So I've got both of my drawings on watercolor paper. Here's what they look like. That's my ready to go watercolor drawing with pencil. All right, and so I'm going to point my camera down and we will get started. If you want to turn in your handout to page 2, because the first page is all about how I traced the image on there and what the little dots mean. In a nutshell, the dots mean if it's 1 dot, it's kind of dark. If it's 2 dots, it means very dark. And so that's just a little shorthand thing that I've developed for myself. Use whatever works for you. But if I see a shape that has an outline around it and it's got two dots in it, I know, oh, that's going to be a very dark color. The color you use isn't as important as how light or dark the actual color is going to be. And watercolor always dries lighter and less intense than what you first put it down. So I will be encouraging you to, you know, really give it some oomph, because when it dries, you'll go, oh, that was kind of more vibrant a few minutes ago. That's what happens to watercolor. It gets a little bit wimpy when it dries. So be bold with your colors if you want it to look bold. All right, so page 2 of this PDF. We're going to start with the woman in the dress and the hat, and I will point my camera down for you to my document camera. Let me make sure it's in focus. All right, there's my setup. I have off to the side a container of water that I'm going to be using to clean my brushes in. And then another container of water that can be smaller. And I like using a clear or a white container for this. This is going to be my clean water supply all the time. I'm not going to rinse any brushes in it. This is my, I need a scoop of clear water thing. So I'll scoop it up and I'll use it somehow in my painting. So that's a separate water supply. So I've got that on the side too. So, and then just rinse your brush off in between colors is the best thing to do. That way, if you've just gotten done using like yellow paint or something and you're wanting to use some blue or purple, then you can dip into that with some the clean water and you won't be surprised. Like, what's going on? Why is that color? All right. So woman with the hat. Here we go. Dress and hat. I'm going to move this one off to the side and I'm going to start on this one. And this one happens to be an unsplash image. It was a watercolor that I thought looked pretty nice. And so I printed it. All of those are royalty-free images. And so that's kind of a nice source for practicing, I think. In your palette, mix a dark watery puddle of burnt sienna. Now you could be using a watercolor tray, for all I know. I don't know what you're using. Or you could be using these tubes of paint, which are also kind of fun to do. So mix a dark puddle of burnt sienna, which is brown, and another dark puddle of ultramarine blue, or whatever kind of blue you have. So here's my burnt sienna. So what I do is I squeeze a little, I don't know, like the size of maybe a garden pea, I guess, in there. And we're not going to use it exactly like that. We're going to actually add some water to it. So you can add water to it by pouring a little bit of water into your well, or you can just get a brush wet and sort of dip some over there. If you missed it, I'll show you how I did that with my ultramarine blue next. So here's my ultramarine blue. I'm going to squeeze that into here. Again, about the size of a garden pea is all you need. And if you want to watch me add the water, I'm going to add that next. I'm going to pour, or you could use a little squeeze dropper or something if you have any of those. There we go. I just added a few drops of water very slowly into the mix. Now I'm going to stir it. Usually I start stirring it with the back of my brush, like the wooden end of my brush. See how the ultramarine blue is becoming nice and watery and inky because I've added water to it. When I say some water, I like adding about twice as much water as paint or you could do 1-to-1. It does need at least as much water as the actual paint, the size of the dollop of paint that you added in there. We're not adding an ocean of water because then it wouldn't even look like anything. It would just still be pretty clear. So we're keeping it kind of concentrated. And I'm stirring this around with the wrong, quote unquote, wrong end of my brush. It just keeps my bristles from getting tons of paint in it, like little globs. And then I'll wipe the brush off like that. And now I'll mix it with my bristles to make sure there's no crumbs and particles and globs and stuff. I'm just trying to make it all nice and smooth. Both of these colors are granulating colors, which means they're a little bit like dirt. They're kind of like, they have little particles floating around in them, which makes a lot of interest as they dry. They look really cool, kind of like the edge of a lake or something. They're very sedimentary. All right, now I'm going to wash my brush off in my dirty water. It's going to get dirty anyway. Now I'll repeat this for my burnt sienna. Just kind of stir this around with my brush handle, and then I'll switch to my bristle. And if you want to throw any other colors into your palette, this would be a cool time to do it. If you're like, I want to use yellow at some point, you can squeeze a little yellow in there and stir that around with some water. Make sure you have at least as much water as paint. This burnt sienna here might need a little more oomph. Actually, I think it's a little too watery on my palette. I might add a little bit more because I want it to be able to get nice and dark when I have a really dark area. But you see how light that looks in my palette? So I'm just going to squeeze a little more in there. And then I'll use the bristles. Just like flung a drop of paint over there on my paper. If you do fling some paint, but accidentally, it depends on the type of watercolor paper you have. Try dabbing it with a paper towel and seeing if it lifts off of there. If you get like a little oops or a uh-oh. If you do, that's okay. If it doesn't come up, you can turn it into something else. Like, well, I meant to do that. That gives me an idea. You can always do that in art. Or like I always say also, if you have an accident, like, oh, whoops, I dipped into bright orange and I totally didn't mean to do that, just add it in other places on your painting and it'll look like it was on purpose. And it might give you an idea to do something that's kind of cool. All right, so we've got these two colors to start with here. And we're going to just have these dark puddles ready to go. Using clear water, we're on number 2 here. Using clear water, paint a puddle of clear water. So now you're dipping into your nice clean water supply here. And your brush is clean too. Over her entire dress. If it's part of the dress, get it wet with clear water. Oh my gosh. So we have to just take some clear water and start painting. I think a little slowly is cool. It like gives you a little more control. We're going to be out of control with this watercolor later. Completely like, what's going to happen? So this is the time when we have some control here. So go kind of slowly. I usually draw around the edges of things a little slowly. And you can see the reflection in my painting here. That means I'm pretty much putting a lake of water on her dress. I'm not just getting it damp. I'm really getting it wet. And you don't want to discriminate here between her shadow areas and her larger highlighted areas of her dress. If it's part of her dress, just get it all wet. Don't worry about the lines of, oh, well, there's a shadow there because there's a dot. That's okay. Paint all over it. So I'm just going a little slow. Now there's her leg. I don't want to get her leg at all. That's not part of her dress. I'll try to keep her leg dry there. But all of these shadows here, do you see how I'm brushing my brush across the I'm just doing it for effect to show you guys. You don't have to go over it and over it like I was. I'm just filling it in with clear water. You're like, why are we doing this? It's just clear. There's nothing happening. No changes. All right. I think I got every part of the dress wet. I'm gonna just make sure that it's nice and puddly, not just damp, but puddly. All right, looks pretty good. Cool. And now, what does it say to do? In all the number 3, in all of the 1 dot areas of the dress, we're going to wipe burnt sienna in the direction of the folds and shadows wherever you see them. And then we're going to repeat the same thing with ultramarine blue while the dress is still wet. Be generous with the paint because it's going to dry much later. So I'm going to start with burnt sienna. It's got kind of that brownish color. I'll move this water so you can see the photo reference. Now, wherever there is a fold on her dress, like there's something under, there's a 1 dot area under her left armpit. So I'm just going to wipe it in the direction of something. You see how it just went woo, and it did whatever it wanted to do. And I'll just kind of wipe it on her shoulder. That's another 1 dot area. I'm going to tilt my paper. Not, you don't tilt your paper. I'm just going to tilt it so you can see what I just did. Look at that. Totally unpredictable, right? Whoa. Don't you just want to mess with that and make it go where you want it to go? But no, let's just let it be watercolor. All right, that's only 2 wipes so far. I'm saying wipe because when I put like a polka dot, it doesn't look as cool. So there's another 1 dot on the, I don't know, on the right side of her torso, kind of armpit area. I'll see if I do a dot. It just kind of sits there and looks like a circle. That's why I say wipe your brush or swipe your brush sort of down or across, or just do it a little directionally. And it just tends to look a little bit cooler than just a bunch of fuzzy polka dots everywhere. So especially on her waistline, below her waistline, there are some kind of cool folds on the fabric. I know it's kind of hard to see right now, but there are a few little folds coming down. So we're going to just sort of play those up because we're artists and we get to play up things. So cool fold right there. Cool fold right there. It may or may not stay the way I just did it. It has a mind of its own, people. And I have to be okay with that. I'm like, well, okay, already you're changing and you're kind of veering to the left right there or to the right there. That's fine. Just let it go. Let it. Now, another 1 dot area down here is kind of fun. These more emphasized areas down here. So I'm going to swipe that. I actually filled my brush with a little bit more brown because it's a little darker shadow here. And I'll do another one there. And remember, I'm going to go back again with ultramarine blue in a second. You're like, what? Going to add blue in too? Yes, we are. Oh, her pocket on the left side is dark. That's cool. Just next to the suitcase hand. So another swipe there, kind of up and down swipe there, and then leave it alone. Look at that. It didn't stay up and down at all. Just did its own thing. Leave it alone. If you're like, well, that's nothing to look at, is it? That's okay. It's in process, just like us. All right, so now I'm going to rinse off my burnt sienna brush in my dirty paint water. Rinse, rinse, rinse. And then I'm going to lift out some of this lovely ultramarine blue. Now, I know it's scary because you're like, there's no blue on her dress. Well, I know, but it's a painting. Nobody's going to see this photo reference, by the way. Nobody cares about this stock photo. Nobody is going to see that. So we're just going to go wee. And same thing, everywhere there's a number 1 dot shadow, I'm just going to touch it with my blue. And here and there, and let it go wherever it wants to go. It's not hitting her arm because I didn't get her arm wet. So it's nice and contained. It's like a little lake. Darker shadow there, so I swiped in some blue there. There should be a nice little line of a blue there. I sort of went swoosh down there. Swoosh. We're not going to worry about this triangle shape of the dark shadow. We're not doing that yet at this stage. If it'll probably leak down into it. See how mine leaked down into it? That's fine. It's not going to hurt anything if it touches that dark shadow, but that's later. When all this is dry, we'll come back and do that crisp edge of the very dark stuff later on. I think I might go ahead and do a little swipe down these dress folds, the ones that are sort of up and down. See how it turns kind of a bluish black, grayish black? And there's some areas that are just stubbornly going to stay blue. That's beautiful. That's the nature of this wet into wet watercolor business. Some of it is going to stay stubbornly, whatever the color is. So that's part of what makes it look awesome. It's something that a camera cannot do. So let's embrace it. A camera cannot do anything what we're doing right now. And we're not making a photograph, we're making a painting. So we're just going to embrace it. There's part of her dress right there that has gotten no color in it yet at all. I might dip back into my burnt sienna and just put a tiny hint of a color right there. Just so it has something. And I didn't leave a polka dot. I sort of swiped it. But don't feel like that it can't have any highlights. I mean, the white of the paper is just beautiful too. So you don't have to be like, oh, there's burnt sienna every single place in this whole thing. It's kind of fun to have white areas that are just sort of, they've got color next to them, and there's some bleeding around and some blending and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave plenty of little white spaces here and there. And I'm going to see what the paint decides to do, how it dries. Because if I'm like, man, I wish I had a little bit more burnt sienna color in that area, I can do that later. This isn't my only chance. So if in doubt, if you're like, well, I want to see how this, because this is me right now. I want to see how this stuff dries, whether any paint makes it over to these white areas or whether it just sort of settles in and stays pure white here and there. I'm curious about it, so I'm going to leave it alone, because after this is dry, I can go in on another whole step and do this whole thing again. Just get it wet. After it dries, I could re-wet the whole dress, drop a tiny bit of burnt sienna there and there and there, and let that dry right on top of what we just did. Because once you can layer watercolor, it's not going to lift up the things we're doing right now. So if in doubt, leave it and see how it looks later. It's crazy waiting for this to dry, isn't it? Now, let's look at the next step. Number 4, leave the dress alone. You can see a repeated theme, right? Now it says, now do the same on the hat. Get it wet with clear water, then wipe burnt sienna into all the 1 dot shadow areas, which are the light shadow areas, followed by ultramarine blue. And then within the water lines, let it be messy, then leave it alone. Don't mess with it. All right, so there's our instructions. You might want to get a smaller brush for this, because the hat could be It's smaller than the dress. So clear, clear, clear water. Bring in my brush over. Gonna get the hat completely wet. Completely puddly. All over. Just the hat. She's got like this cowboy hat on or something. And wherever the brush touches, not her hair, but the you can look at your photo reference right here if you're in doubt of what means what on your drawing. So wherever it looks like it's a hat, get it nice and wet in a puddly manner. It does not work if it's just damp. If it's just barely damp, then it's gonna just kind of sit there wherever you paint. It's not gonna travel. We want the paint to travel. You're like, what? But I don't have control. I know. I know. So wherever the one dot shadows are, I'm going to add a little bit of, oh, let me make it not so reflection-y for you. There we go. Look at that beautiful hat. See, it's not going into the sky because I didn't paint the sky wet. I didn't get the sky wet at all. It's bone dry. But her hat is wet. You can see that, right? So again, I'll lift it up so you can see what I'm doing. I'm looking at my reference, and wherever it's kind of dark-ish, I'll drop in some of those shadow colors, starting with my burnt sienna. If she was wearing more of a bluish hat, I would start with my ultramarine blue instead. But she's wearing like a peachish, brownish hat, and so I'm starting with my burnt sienna instead. So then I'm going to follow this up while it's still wet. I'm going to grab a little bit of ultramarine blue and look at where it's kind of the darkest. And I'll drop that in right on top of it while it's still wet. Isn't it cool? I know it can be scary, but it's really cool. So I didn't echo the ultramarine blue everywhere where I put the original, wherever I put that original burnt sienna, I'm not just echoing the exact same areas that I already put the brown. I want my blue to be in slightly different places so that there's a little bit of distinction. Like, oh, look, there's a stripe of blue on the edge, but then it turns into this glorious brown as it goes the other direction. So I want some areas where it's like you can kind of see bits of blue and you can kind of see bits of brown. And then there will be a lot of other areas where it'll just look kind of this lovely gray color where they've both combined of their own volition. It has a mind of its own. We embrace that. So there is her dress and her hat. We have done steps 1 through 4 on the second page of our handout. And now the end of step 4 says, let it be messy, then leave it alone. Don't mess with it. So you can see the dress is already changing right before our eyes as it dries in unpredictable ways. Everybody's is going to look different. And if I were making this exact same painting, even if I was following along with my own video tomorrow, making the exact same, it wouldn't look the exact same. How could it? It's very, very free. So now we're going to look at the next, again, if you're following along, I'm going to be working on sometimes this kneeling artist and sometimes this suitcase, the lady with the dress and the hat. So right now, if I tilt this thing, it's going to affect how the paint is drying. It's not wrong to tilt your work, but if you tilt it, you can see what it does. You could be like, "Ooh, look at that. It's traveling even farther down." It's your art. I'm going to leave mine mostly flat. If you want to tilt it a little just to experiment. I mean, that's why we're here. You know, you're experimenting. So you can tilt it this way, tilt it that way, but try not to do it in a control-y type of manner. You can also just leave it flat, especially if it has begun to dry. Depending on the area where you're at around the country, if you're in the Boise, Idaho area, it's going to dry twice as fast as if you're in Mississippi. That's just the way that is. So I'm going to put this over to the side. We will get back to you, hat lady. Now we're going to work on this. So we did her dress and her hat, filled it in with just 2 colors so far. You can always add another color back in, you know, if you're like, well, I want little bits of pink or something like that, you know, feel free. It's your painting. You don't have to use the same colors that I'm using. Again, these are granulating colors, so it's kind of fun to watch what they dry like. All right, let's look at number 5. Now we're going to shift gears and go into this kneeling artist. We're going to hit the skin tone first, face and hand. There's 2 hands. There's one hand down here, kind of in this area, and there's another hand that she's painting with. So this other hand right here might be hard to see. She also has a foot. You can decide if that foot is a sock, a shoe, flesh color, whatever you want. So if we look at our reference that we're using, nobody looks at this and goes, what's on her foot? You see how it's just sort of a supporting character on this painting? Nobody cares. That's why it's neutral. But if you're like, well, I love pink fuzzy socks, then you can make her wear pink fuzzy socks. It's really up to you. It's not the first thing in this edition or rendition. It's not the first thing that you notice. So you decide the color, the shirt that you want her to wear, the color of the jeans, the color of the hair, all of it. This is all your choice. I'm gonna just do my my best to kind of replicate it. It's not going to be the exact same. It cannot be the exact same because watercolor has a mind of its own. So I'll kind of try to get something similar going here, but do whatever you want. All right. For the skin tone, we're going to mix in our palette a very watery puddle of yellow plus orange plus burnt sienna. Now, I know orange wasn't on your supply list, but red is. So if you have red, you can either use some cadmium red, or, you know, which is like an orangey red, kind of a tomato color, or you can use magenta. That's another really nice color. So let's just put a little bit of red for ourselves to use somewhere. I'm going to pour mine right here. We'll use red, and then we'll put yellow down, and I'm using a color called Hansa yellow. You can use whatever yellow you've got. And I'm going to make my yellow here, and then I think in the palette in between, see how I left one blank there? I might mix some orange in that one because red plus yellow equals orange. So I might do that, but do whatever you'd like to do. I haven't added water to them yet. That's just the tube paint. So I'm going to add my clear water to both of these puddles. And I'm supposed to add a little, you know, we haven't, neither one of these are skin tone colors yet. We'll just kind of hit that next. But first, let's get some pure red, pure yellow. And then we'll have a nice orange in between after we mix them. So here's how I'm going to start stirring these, is with the wrong end of my brush first. I'm going to stir those around, get most of it stirred up. Wipe it on my paper towel. Get the bristles in there to kind of smash things up and make everything real smooth. Stir kind of slowly when it's at this phase, because it does like to flick little droplets of bright red or whatever you're working on your painting. So go a little slow. And then with a clean brush, I'm emphasizing clean because yellow. Then we'll do the same thing here. We'll mix our wrong end first to get most of the globs out. You notice how we take longer to do this part than even putting the color down? That's what people go, oh, that watercolor painting looks like it only took 10 minutes to make. Well, yeah, maybe it did for the painting of it. The actual application of brush to paper, it could be that it did. It could be that they thought it through, decided where to put their darkest colors and their lightest colors ahead of time, just like we did. Their little dots and stuff. It takes longer than people think, of course, just the preparation of it. The painting itself, though, could go really fast, and that's part of the fun and part of the thrill. And you're like, wow, oh my gosh. Because, you know, it can go fast. Not everybody paints this way. Some people do photorealism with their watercolor, and it's all very exacting and thought out and drawn out very carefully and planned and executed very slowly. And that's a whole other way to paint with watercolor. All right, I've got some pure yellow and pure red, so I'm going to actually lift some yellow out of that well, and I'll start a little orange pile right here. See, I'm just going to take some paint out of this, and then I'll wipe it onto this other well, squeeze my brush out a little bit to help it flow out. And there's the start of my orange. I mean, it's still yellow, but it will be orange. And I have to rinse my brush off because it's got all yellow all over it right now. So nice clean brush. Now I'll dip it into my red. Red is a traveling color. If you're using cadmium red, it just goes whoosh and it makes everything like sort of flow and shoots across your wet paint. It's really fun how that works. There, look at that beautiful orange I just made. I had to put more yellow than red because red is powerful. So start with a big puddle of yellow and then add just a little bit of red in. And it will make a nice orange. Doesn't take much red to make an orange. Cool. We still don't have our actual flesh color yet. And so there are a ton of different ways to make a flesh color. Flesh color is not peach, contrary to popular belief. But whatever color of a human you're making, let's designate a little pile somewhere that's nice and clean. I'm going to use this well right here. It's an empty well. This is going to be my flesh color for, I think, both of these characters. I want to make my characters a little bit darker than my photo references. So I'm going to start with, it says on step number 5, it says mix a watery puddle of yellow plus orange plus burnt sienna. Okay, so some yellow, bring some over. Some orange with a clean brush. Some burnt sienna. You can add some ultramarine blue in if you would like to. You can make this as dark or light as you would like. Make sure it's enough of the color that you want to, you know, extend it across both of these paintings. There's not that much surface area, but it's better to have a little too much paint than not enough to be like running out, you know. I'm going to add a tad of this ultramarine blue in the mix, even though it doesn't say that on your handout. Okay. That's my flesh color. And now it says halfway through step number 5, make another well of the same, but with more red in it. So I'm going to lift some of this out that I just invented. And I'm going to say, okay, this is my little red. You know, for like the fingers are a little red and The cheeks might be kind of red, the nose, the knee might be a little red. So I've got my same flesh color here that I invented, but now I'm going to take a little bit of red and add that in, or even a lot, I don't know. Kind of obviously red. But it's got the other skin tones in it. Add a little bit more skin tone back in. There you go. It's kind of about mixing things ahead of time so that when the paper is wet, then I can be like just dropping stuff in as I want. And I'm not like stopping to mix something new. Kind of like building a house, huh? It's like the architect works a long time to get everything drawn out. Then the contractors get to work. This is not the only way to do watercolor. You can also be very, very free flowing with it. But in a step-by-step demo, it's better for people to not feel frustrated. Like, how did that happen? I want to do that thing you did. And then from there, you get to experiment and make your own stuff. And you can be as free as you want. All right. Side note, I always use a really soft, clothy towel, paper towel like Viva when I'm doing watercolor because it makes me feel special. It's kind of like a reward for doing watercolor is get something that's fun to wipe the colors on. All right. Okay, we're still in step 5. We've made another well of the same, but with more red in it that we can drop in. Test both colors on a scrap, it recommends. Well, that's pretty smart. If you have a scrap watercolor paper, I mean, you could test it on like printer paper if you want, but it's a little more accurate if you can be like, okay, what does that look like? Test. That's my skin color. This is my redder skin color. Seems like I have too much yellow in here for me. So I have some decisions to make. What's the opposite of yellow in painting? Complementary colors.
Purple.
Yeah, that's right, purple. So if I mix a little bit of blue and a little bit of red, blue and red make purple, right? And throw it into that, it will neutralize my yellow. So that's kind of a cool thing. If it's too this, then add that. If it's too green, then add red. If it's too blue, then add orange. If it's too orange, then add blue. If it's too yellow, like mine is, add purple, quote unquote. So I'm just gonna mix a little bit of purple. See, I just touched a little bit of burnt sienna, ultramarine blue into my original skin mix. And I'm gonna add a little bit of red. Oh, and if it's too dark, add water. If it's too light, you'll need to add more paint. Okay, I essentially added more purple, quote unquote, into my mix because I added a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of red. And I mean a little because I'm going to test it again and see if it's better. I might need to add a little water. That is better. And remember, watercolor dries lighter. So I'm going to actually pour a tiny bit of water into the mix just to adjust it how I want it to be. And yeah, you can adjust the tones however you want to see them. Well, cool. I think I'm ready to paint. Oh, I love that crisp line. To see that first one that I made, I'll focus it for you. Try to make it like a little stripe or a swipe and then leave it alone while it's drying. You see that crisp line that it made around the border? That's beautiful. That is a trademark of watercolor. All right, so we've got our little scrap off to the side. Now what does step 5 say? We tested it on the scrap. Paint the artist's skin color, but leave the highlights of the hand holding the brush unpainted. So is this a big brush or a little brush? Probably little. Probably a smallish brush. I always say paint with the biggest brush possible. Well, it would be kind of impossible to paint this with a big brush. So I'm going to drop in my flesh colors on the skin of this artist who's at work painting something. I'm going to leave her glasses unpainted, or you could paint her glasses if you want. It's like a profile of somebody hard at work. I'll do a little focus here. My document camera is trying really hard to focus. There we go. That's how I did her face. I left her glasses kind of white. If you want to, you can drop some of that red mix in as it's drying right there on the cheek. Boop, and then let it be. Let it be. Still letting it be. It is such a discipline. So back to my normal skin mix, whatever I've got mixed up for myself here. I'm going to add that in. I didn't get her arm wet this time. I'm just painting it straight on the dry paper. Leave the highlights of the knuckles. You notice that our pencil line stops right there. It's kind of the end of the universe for this part of the painting. We're just going to let that be because the highlight of the hand is going to be air. What's that phenomenon that people have, the gestalt? We finish things with our eyes, with our brains. There's like an implied line, but it's actually disconnected. We fill that in. We know that that's the highlight of the hand. So the little fingers are basically ovals that we pre-drew. There's also a little brush bristle, but I'm not going to do that with skin tone. I'll do that with brown or gray or something, black. So while my main skin color is drying, I'll throw some red into it here and there. And I'm going to look at my photo reference too in a bit, and I'll show you that too. I'm going to drop in some red elbows, a red hand, a little bit of red fingers. I might be doing this little overkill here. I don't know. I might like it. I'm usually of the mind to let it play out, let it drift around. It never looks as dramatic as when you first drop it in. So try to keep that little adrenaline spike from being like, oh no, you messed up. Well, not necessarily. We'll see what it does. It's just a piece of paper. That's not a helpful view to you guys, what I just painted, but you can see this, right? There's some dark on the top of her hand and the other edge of her hand. And that one pointer finger, index finger is kind of dark. So I might very well brush some ultramarine blue into those areas right now. So here I go. Focus again. And I'm just going to actually dip into my plain old ultramarine blue. I don't have a mix ready. I just want to touch it on those areas. So I'm going to touch it here on the top of her hand. Just kind of like let it float around and do what it's going to do. On the other side of her hand, I'm going to touch that too. Everybody else's is going to be darker or lighter than what I'm doing. That's totally fine. There's not a wrong way to do this. If you want to lift anything that you're like, oh, that that got too dark in that little area right there. Okay, technically you could touch it with your paper towel. I would advise instead to wait and see what it does. Because then you're going to start getting real nitpicky about everything and it's going to ruin it. But technically, yeah, you can lift out things with your paper towel. Look at all that variety we just got by dropping these pre-mixed colors in there. That's kind of cool. You see how her on the one I did, her cheek isn't very red, even though it sort of looked red when I first dropped it in. Is it still wet? Let's check. You can tell if something is still wet by tilting it against some light. There, see her face is still wet. Mine is. That means I can drop another color in. Let's see if it'll work. Yeah, I can drop in a little bit of red again. So I just did that. But I did test it to make sure it was still reflective and glistening as far as, is this paper still wet or is it just damp? Because if it's just damp, it's too late to add in other stuff. You just got to wait until it's completely dry. Oh, she has another hand. Right. I forgot to do that one. It might be too late for me to do it because if I start adding colors in now, like if you got your second hand all done with the same flesh color and you're just happily dropping colors in, good for you. Keep doing it. It's too late for mine though because my arm right here has kind of started to settle in and dry and the colors are like, they've had their bit as far as changing where they go and flowing, and so I'm going to leave that for later at this point. Yeah. It'll still be there for me. Don't worry. Sock wise, I think on mine, I'm not going to do a flesh color. I think I'm going to give her a gray sock today. That's just what I'm deciding. All right. Wasn't that thrilling and scary? So number 6 says the woman in the dress and the hat. I'm just going to read it. You can keep doing whatever you're doing right now. It says for us to make a third well of watery burnt sienna and blue. Using the same skin colors as above, paint her skin. Into the 1 dot areas, drop some burnt sienna and blue mix into the softer skin shadows while the skin color is still wet. All right. So basically on this one, it just says that whatever that skin color is, we're going to be dropping some darker shadows in because the lady with the hat has some darker shadows along her arm and especially down by her legs and everything. It's super dark. Her neck has some really darker shadows in it. She's got darker shadows on her than our lady kneeling on the floor painting. She doesn't have very many really dark skin shadows. She had a couple. And that's what the ultramarine blue is so good at, making skin shadows. Especially when you add a little burnt sienna in. These are great partners. These 2 colors right here, the blue and the brown. Oh man, they mix so beautifully to make these awesome granulated dark browns and grays and black colors. They're awesome. So we're going to make a little puddle of dark shadow skin colors that we can dip into. So I'm just going to take some of that. I'm going to stir it a little because, it's a granulating color. it has settled since we mixed it. So I'm going to just give it a light stir again. And I'm going to bring that over here. These are my skin darker shadows. So a little bit of brown, a little bit of blue. I'll give the ultramarine blue a little bit of a stir really slowly so it doesn't splatter. There, now I have a really dark, really nice grayish shadowy color that I can dip into. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but there it is. It's ready for me. We'll find out, right? All right, so we're supposed to leave this kneeling artist one alone, right? Here we go. We're going to put this to the side. If you're only working on one or the other of these paintings today, just take a break while I'm doing this other step. Or you can fast forward the replay if you're only working on one or the other. All right, there is how my dress turned out on this one. That's kind of cool. I'll see if I want to add anything in later, like a third color or whatever, but for now, that's what it looks like. Ooh, I like it. I'm going to show you some close-up highlights of the edge of the dress where I was like, you know, feel free to watch what the white areas do. The entire dress is like, it's got the burnt sienna everywhere. Even though I had white areas, there's only one little area right here along the edge of the dress that is absolutely beautiful and totally unplanned by me, where it stayed actual dry paper right there. I mean, it was wet, right? I got the whole dress wet, but it dried like that. And it's got these really cool little in reaches of where the color never moved. And I think that's beautiful. It sort of gives this glistening highlight here along the edge. I can't do that twice. The hat has a real soft edge where it curves around and the light is hitting it. That's cool. Again, can't control that either. Just happened that way. So if there's areas on your dress that you're like, I really don't like this or that or whatever, you're not done yet. You can always do another layer of watery something. If you're adding more wet into wet, then you would want to, you know, this isn't for right now. We're doing the skin right now, but for later, you could get the whole dress wet again, like we did before. Drop in some streaks of pink, yellow, whatever it is that you're wanting else to see in the dress and or the hat. And for now, we're going to do the skin. So let's leave the dress dry, okay? Because we don't want the dress and the skin to interact with each other unless you do.
Hey, Jesse.
Yeah.
If one of our sleeves that's near the skin is still wet, what do you recommend?
Oh, yeah. Kind of like, so
That
this
one holding, yeah, that one right there is still wet.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I would recommend you can start with the face, this down here, the leg,
Okay.
wherever it's dry. But if it has a big glob of paint right there,
Uh-huh.
now if it's just really clear water and it's not really much going on there anymore and it's just a really big blob of water, you could actually touch it with a paper towel and absorb it and help it to be wicked up into some, even a brush could sort of wick some of the extra bubble up. Unless something interesting is happening in the wet area, then leave it alone and be like, I'm going to be patient. So that's my advice. If
Thanks.
nothing real interesting is happening, you could speed it up by wicking the blob up. Otherwise, I would leave it. Because you don't know what, like I said, the highlight of the dress right there was not that interesting until it dried. So you can't really predict what's going to be interesting later. All right, we did the scrap of testing. I got my skin color adjusted to what I wanted it to be. And so I've got that puddle right here. I memorized where this one was because it doesn't look, you can't tell by looking at this so much what's where. But I know that that's my skin color. That's my redder of the same. That's my real dark shadow color. So just refamiliarize yourself with what's where. And then using a clean brush, we'll do the same thing. Whatever your primary, not primary, whatever your main skin color is, give it a little stir real slowly first if it kind of separated out. And then you can start painting wherever you see, avoiding areas that are still wet. Um, let me see. Paint her skin in the one dot areas, then you can drop some of that darker stuff in. But all right, so I'm gonna just paint wherever the skin colors are, like on her neck. Her face. And I'll lift this up so you can see. I was choosing to leave her hair dry right now because I'm not doing her hair yet. So wherever I can see there's a big tendril of hair swooping across her face, I skipped that. But if you got yours painted, that's totally fine. All right, so I got that part done. And I'm going to do her arm because my dress is pretty much dry around that. So I'm going to do this one. Her little thumb there. You can use a small brush if you prefer. For some of this stuff, I like using a flat brush because I can turn my flat brush sideways and make it really narrow if I need it to be. And her leg is down here. Make sure the dress is dry, like I said. It's not so bad though if your like dress color bleeds into your leg. Just leave it. That's fine. It adds interest. Now, on the original photo reference, we know that this suitcase is very dark and it has really dark shadows that kind of, I recommended joining the dark shadows here with the suitcase color so it sort of blends all together. We'll hit that later. So because of that, I left those shadows off because that is so, so dark that gets a whole different treatment later. Into this mix, we're going to start dropping our other colors. If you want her to have kind of red cheeks or whatever, you can drop that in and let it flow. That's fun. Remember, everything looks a lot lighter later. I want her to have a little bit of a very red nose. It does kind of dissipate though. Let's see if there's anywhere on her neck that looks kind of reddish. Yeah, there is. That upper part that's in sunlight looks kind of red, so I'm going to drop some in. This was my red mix that I made of skin color. Her arm looks kind of red. I think she got a little sunburn on this photo shoot, maybe. So I'm going to throw that in there. We'll throw some in her leg area too. Why not? A little bit of red here and there. That's what I'm choosing to do. Do whatever makes you happy. And then the remember how we got really dark shadow areas? I added a little bit more because as my paper dries, the red is not going to travel quite as far, which is nice. It'll stay a little bit closer to where I put it. So our dark shadow areas, I'm going to be really brave and pick some up while the skin is still wet. And I'm going to be looking at that as a reference. And dropping those dark colors in. So I tilted my paper so you can see a little bit clearly. There's a big shadow that runs along her whole left side of her arm. I'm going to see if her arm is dry enough for me to add that in. I think it's staying pretty well where I want it. Now, as you're doing this step, again, paper towels are kind of nice. You can, fold it like a little point or a little edge, and you can dab, different places. Like I think I might dab her chin area to kind of make it a little lighter there. There we go. I just touched it kind of lightly as the paper was drying. And that makes it a little more bright, like the sun is hitting her nose and her chin before it dries very much at all. I can always lift things out like that. I might lift off a little bit from where the sun is really bright on her upper chest, because the type of watercolor paper I'm using is really receptive to being lifted like that. I usually try to use Arches paper. That's what I'm using right now. Arches is simply amazing paper. It allows you to play and be flexible. It almost allows you to brush it back to, or lift it almost all the way back to white. If you're almost, never gets all the way back to white, but it's pretty good about what you can do with it. Keep in mind that watercolor dries lighter and less intense than when you first put it down. It's amazing how it morphs and changes though as it dries. If there's any questions for me as we are doing the skin tone of Lady with Dress and Hat, you can unmute yourself. When I'm drawing out my references, photography is a whole different medium. Painting is a whole different medium. Drawing is a whole different medium. They're different. So when I'm drawing a reference that I'm like, the end goal is to paint, I'm keeping that in mind when I'm drawing. I'm not like, oh, I have to make the most beautiful drawing ever. I'm going to paint the thing. It has different needs than a drawing. Like if I was just using a pencil on paper, I would have a whole different set of goals and treatment of my pencil and all of that. But being that this is a watercolor, you can do this with acrylic as well. I like marking where I'm going to make my boldest shadow lines. I like having my pencil as part of the finished work. It's a second fiddle to the paint, but it is totally okay if the pencil lines show. Those 2-dot lines won't show. The 2 dots that are here and there in all of our references will eventually be covered with paint so dark that those dots are not going to show. But they are there as part of our game plan. Like I want that part to be very dark, but I want this part to be only somewhat dark. As a live painter, that really helps me too when I'm just kind of going for broke and being really free and dropping different colors in and stuff like that. Those little dots are really helpful. Like, I don't know what I was going to do there. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's like a mid-tone, but I can use whatever color combinations that I want to. And of course, I can always change my mind on light, medium, and dark areas on any painting that I want as well. All right. We're going to switch gears back to our kneeling artist again. And so here we go. That's how I left the lady with the dress and hat for right now. See all those too dark, I'm not too dark, 2-dot areas here and here and here. Suitcase, leg shadows, those will all be really dark. We'll add that later. Questions before we leave this lady? Okay, we're good. All right, we're switching back to this one. The kneeling artist, hard at work painting stuff. That's how her skin turned out. Look at that. That's kind of cool. Can't really control how that is. I have to remember to do that other hand at some point. I'll get to it. So that's part of watercolor, is kind of coming back to things, planning things. I'm really blessed to live in a pretty dry climate, so I don't have to wait forever to finish something, which is really nice because I'm kind of a fast painter. That's just how I like to work. So I will plan to do this hand when it won't conflict with what's around it. So what's around it for me, since I forgot to do it when I was doing this arm, which you might have done both at the same time before. But for me, where I'm at right now, right next to this hand is this shirt right here. She's wearing the most comfy muumuu. I don't know what she's wearing, but it's awesome. So this purple or whatever I'm going to do is going to run right into this hand. So I can't do that in the same step. Okay. But if there's another step that doesn't involve this, I can do the hand at the same time because I already know what colors to dip into. I've got my main, this one. This is my main flesh color here. And then that's my little addition of red here and there. If I want it to be darker, I could add shadows in, but I probably won't for this. See how her thumb is red in the reference? I'm going to probably add some red in there. As long as I'm not working on the purple shirt, I'll be good to go. So I'll keep that in mind. Let's look at the next step. Number 7, hair and jeans of the kneeling artist. Okay, wet the hair and the jeans with clear water, and then wipe in burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and Payne's gray. Ooh, Payne's gray. We haven't used that color yet. So I'm going to take some Payne's gray first. Before we start doing the thing that it says do, we want to make sure that we have our stuff ready to dip into. Now, one of the cool things about Payne's gray is it does contain some ultramarine blue in it. So it is, again, one of those cool granulating colors, but it's going to be a little darker than this homemade mix of the brown and the blue together. Remember how we made that? So this is even darker. It's like gonna be oomph. So I poured my paint from the tube. I'm gonna add some water, clear water, about twice as much water as paint. And I'll mix it again. Yeah, isn't Payne's gray delightful? It's got that gorgeous blue kind of hue to it, even though it's close to black. It's a beautiful color. Beautiful. All right, so that'll come in handy when we're doing all sorts of stuff here on both of these. As you can see how dark some of these little areas are. The way that watercolor really sparkles is because you've painted some dark onto the painting here and there, which are also vibrant and beautiful and glorious in their own right. But if I showed you just a plain white piece of paper, you wouldn't go, oh, that's so sparkly. Look at that sparkle. It's only because you have dark here and there on the painting that the lighter areas are, giving that illusion of sparkling. It's about contrast and kind of tricking the eye a little bit, which is pretty fun. Okie doke. So, wet the hair and the jeans. I have to smash this in. Sorry, I forgot. If I don't smash it in with my bristles and stir that around real slow, there will be chunks and gobs, and I will be taken by surprise. I'll be like, oh no, I didn't mix that very smoothly. All right, now I should be ready. For number 7, wet the hair and the jeans with clear water and then wipe in burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and wherever you need it to be really dark, Payne's gray. And you're going to want more brown for the hair and more blue for the jeans. Ooh, that sounds like a lot. So let's just do one thing at a time here. Hair and jeans. So we have the kneeling artist and her hair. Figure out what color of hair you want her to have and get it all wet. With clear water. And if you prefer to paint it in like we did the skin, you don't have to do wet into wet. That's what if you paint it with clear water, that's called wet into wet. It gives those cloudy blooms and interesting, things like that in the hair. Or you can just paint it right onto the dry paper with your burnt sienna or whatever you're using. So using more brown in the hair, but we're not going to use straight brown. We're going to actually drop in some, yes, ultramarine blue into the hair. What? We can't have blue hair. Yes, we can. Blue hair is cool, right, Amy? So I'm starting in some burnt sienna. And yeah, that's cool. So you can get it as light or dark as you want. If you want it to be more of a yellower, blonder, white hair is cool. It won't be just the white of the paper. You'll want to put a little gray or brown or something into it. You can do whatever color you want there. I'm going to add my blue in. It's not going to read as blue. It'll just sort of read as a duller brown than what I had to begin with, because it looked kind of almost red before, red orange. Now it's going to look a little bit more brown. And in the photo reference over here, you'll notice that it does get darker down here. We'll come back in with another layer. But yeah, the hair is it's pretty awesome. So you can let those individual colors show, or you could leave it pretty blended or whatever you want to do with the hair. You can make her have pink hair or purple hair. Purple hair is cool. That's how I left my hair. Do whatever you were wanting to do. It's just the first go round. Later on, we're going to come back with more. When this is dry, we're going to come back and do some darker stuff into it. Jeans. For this one, we're going to take our clear water and looking at where the jeans stop and the purple shirt stops, we're going to just fill all that in. So we're not doing the purple shirt yet. Just kind of fill that in with your clear water. My clear water has a little burnt sienna in it, but it won't matter. And get her jeans all wet with clear, puddly water. And then when it's time, remember, we're going to put more blue into this mix, but we're still going to include some brown. The hair and the jeans will have a lot of relationship to each other because they both have the same two colors in them, which is blue and brown. It'll have a little Payne's gray in there too. So looking at your reference here, we're going to just drop in the bluer. I'm going to just put a bunch of ultramarine blue by itself on my brush. And I'll just drop that in. And I'll scribble back and forth in the 1 dot areas. Scribble, scribble. Leave it alone. I left that highlight on the very top because I think that will keep traveling somehow upward. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. I'm going to drop a little burnt sienna in here. But again, I want the jeans to be more blue than brown. So I'm going to go drop, swipe, whatever the word is. Swipe, swipe. I'm just putting a little bit, like 2 dots in of the burnt sienna, maybe 3. Why did I add orange into my blue jeans? Because I want to dull them down. I don't want them to be bright blue because they're jeans. Jeans are very rarely bright blue. They have a little mutedness to them. And in this case, it's an artist working on the floor. Maybe her jeans have a little bit of dirt on them. There's nothing wrong with that. There is no way for me to have a piece of art that looks exactly like this photo reference right here on the other side. I'm sure I'm looking at it as a reference point, but I can't control where this watercolor paint travels when I'm putting this on. And as it dries, it's going to get lighter and lighter. So we'll just see what happens. Again, this is my first go round. We're going to have another go round in a bit. When the jeans are dry, we're going to come back in and do some of those hardline shadows. So that'll be fun too. If you want them to be lighter jeans, go easy on this, but you can take the paper towel and dab just, I'm going to say just in a couple of places. Don't go all over the place because remember, the paint dries light. Trust the paint. But I just touched mine with my paper towel in just a couple of those places on the very top. Very briefly, ever so briefly, and please don't mess with it and fuss around because that's not the point. Only in a case where you're like, the value of that is really, really dark. And I need to lighten that one area for good reason. Then just touch it very briefly with your paper towel. Like once or twice, that's it. Ooh, look at that's cool. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Okay, I'm going to show you a close up of the way mine is drying. See what I'm saying? I wasn't going touch, touch, touch with my paper towel. Fuss, fuss, fuss. I left it alone and look at the reward. That's the beauty of it. I guess this is a good time for me to draw that other little hand out, that hand on the bottom. So I think I remember how I did that. If I'm working on a project where it's going to take a couple of days to finish something, especially if I'm illustrating a book or, something like that, I will label my wells because there is no way I'm going to remember, well, which one is this skin color I was using? What was this for? I don't even remember. Like, I'll label it with a post-it or something. I'll be like, oh, okay, main skin color, arrow. um, red color for cheeks and fingers, arrow. That's so helpful. But if you're doing something quick, you don't need to do that. I'm dropping some red into the fingertips and the thumb. Again, it looks more exaggerated when I'm doing it right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so red. That's fine. It's a painting. Chances are it's going to dry a lot more subtle, kind of boring. That's okay. That's why it's better to just kind of let it be punchy when it's wet. It's a watercolor. It's supposed to look like a watercolor. And you're an artist, so you can exaggerate stuff. Even if you didn't mean to exaggerate it. It's just like, yeah, it's exaggerated. I meant to do that. Actually, I was just dropping the red in and it was a little stronger than I thought, but I'm not going to tell anybody that. Remember to flex your shoulders and neck and kind of move a little bit because, man, sometimes when we're like concentrating and we're like, ooh, I've been doing this thing we're not looking at clocks. Clocks are not allowed. We're just in the zone. We're in the artistic zone. But move your shoulders sometimes so you're not like, oh, all stiff afterwards. Ooh, next we're gonna look at our lady with the hat again and the dress. So I'm gonna carefully move this somewhere where it can dry flat, same as we've been doing. And we're going to be painting all of her. No, we're at number 8 on the handout, page 2. Number 8. Woman in the dress and the hat, paint all of her hair and the light suitcase highlights. Side note, let's look at this suitcase and see what I'm talking about. This suitcase has some very light brown stripes on it. It's real beat up and it's seen better days, but that's part of the charm. So that's the highlights I'm talking about, wherever it's nicked up and there's a line, sharp line right there and stuff like that. We've got those drawn into our photo reference if you were tracing the reference. So those are the highlights I'm talking about, these little nicks and straight lines. So we're going to paint all of those and her hair with a light wash of burnt sienna. All right, so our burnt sienna, we're going to give that a stir with a narrow brush, kind of a small brush, pointed looking brush. I mean, it could be a flat too. I don't know. The hair, you might want to use a pointed brush for this if you have a small pointed brush, round brush. All right. When I say a light wash, it doesn't mean so light that you can't see it. It means it's, I don't know, just make it be kind of burnt sienna. It dries lighter than what you put it on. So make a wash of burnt sienna everywhere where those suitcase highlights are. And you know, if there's dots and nicks you want to add, and like, ooh, I want to draw some of those real nicky areas down here too, like where it's all beat up. Those will be our light areas later. You don't have to be real detailed. We're going to go over this later with the dark stuff. It'll go around these areas. So this will dry, and then we can go in with our very dark, sharp shapes. And those will be sort of the details that you put around these. This is the underneath color. So I got that done, and now I'm going to do her hair. Everywhere where she has that flowing, wind-blown hair, whether it's right under her hat or over here where the wind is blowing her hair, put some burnt sienna. Feel free to do a different color if that's more preferable for you. She could have bright pink hair or something different. That's all right. There's a hair strand that's flowing across her jaw line. So we'll paint that in too. Must be a very windy day. Now I've got all of her hair kind of filled in, and the paper is still wet. I know this because I just put it down. And I've got her suitcase looks like that. See how sloppy that is? It's because it doesn't matter. Like later when we color the suitcase in, it's going to be very, very dark paint. But I'll leave the areas around these brown lines just the brown that they are. Much different method than acrylic, huh? Yep. Night and day. The suitcase thing we're doing is a good example of when people say paint light to dark. And you're like, well, what the heck does that mean? It means get your light areas colored in sort of first, and then you come back with the dark is the cherry on top. Sort of the last thing that you add on in general. I don't personally believe that it always has to be, light to dark. But if you start out with your gentler colors like yellow or whatever, orange colors, I do like giving them a fighting chance, getting those put down toward the beginning of the process. So the hair, now we're going to add our colors in. Like we have a different bunch of dark colors that we could throw in. You can make you can use some Payne's gray, some darker brown, that burnt sienna color. So wherever you want to drop that into the wet hair that we put on there, you can do all the hair color all at once. My advice is go as dark as you can. In some areas of the hair, you could see some blue Yes, blue. You know, the ultramarine blue is wonderful to throw in there. And some plain old brown, the burnt sienna is nice to see kind of peeking through here and there. So with your brush, first dip into one and then dip into another color. You're not painting it all the same color. You know, dip into some brown, and then next dip you can dip into some blue. Next dip you can dip into some Payne's gray. Kind of mix it up. If you have magenta, that'd be fun to put in there too if you want. All the colors will kind of end up morphing and blending together and looking really kind of cool and fun. And no, you can't predict it. That's the point. Otherwise, you would just take a photograph because it's faster. It's all right to add other little tendrils of hair, kind of like on the reference. There's a little, tendril blowing here and there. You can add those in if you want. We didn't draw those in originally because we were trying to keep it simple. Everything is still nice and wet. So I can just drop in whatever shadows I want. No need to make it look exactly like the photo reference either. Now see how the blue that I dropped in doesn't look blue because we have a basis of brown everywhere. So it's going to really tone down that blue when you start dropping bright blue in. Don't let that stop you from dropping bright blue in. It adds so much variety and beauty when you drop ultramarine blue into the shadow colors. Everybody's hair is going to look very different because even mine is going to look different from one day to the next. When it's time to do her eyes and eyebrows and stuff, which we're not doing quite yet, you'll come in and do that a little bit later. But you want to make sure the face is totally dry first before you do that. I might do the area next to her hand or her all along her arm, how it's got that little dark area there. Kind of winging it at this point, to be honest, because the painting is going to have needs of its own at some point. And I have to, as the artist, I have to make a departure from the reference and just do what I feel like the painting needs. But the reference is still there for me. If I want to look at it, I certainly can. I might do those brown buttons all the way down her dress. That might be kind of fun to do. Even if you can't see them anymore because of the other layers of paint that we put on there, just guess. If you didn't want buttons on your painting, you don't have to put buttons. But I am. You see how my buttons are not all perfect and round? That's because it's a painting. I just can't emphasize enough. Like, you do not have to be photorealistic with any of this. It is a painting. All my buttons are a little bit different darknesses or lightnesses from each other. That's fine. They can have a little looseness to them. Maybe looks like somebody painted it. Even my borders that I draw around my paintings, they're crooked. They don't look straight. I didn't use a ruler for any of these. It's not wrong to use a ruler. I just like the kind of immediacy of a shaky line. And it sort of adds in like this built-in matte almost. That's just personal preference. Everybody is going to have a different desire to, with all of this stuff that we're doing. But I like the immediacy of the crooked line. I think it's really endearing. Makes it look like a drawing or a painting or whatever it is. I'm going to teach you how to make the grass next here in the lower left corner of Suitcase Lady. I'm going to start by dropping some burnt sienna into everywhere because I want there to be sort of a brown grassy feel. So we're going to start by filling those in because we have our small pointed brush. So this will be all wet with brown grass. Poor grass, nobody watered it. And while the grass is still wet, and yeah, you don't have to get perfect with this stuff, really. It's okay. Those lines are just there as a guide. When the grass is still wet, we're going to come in with a little bit of green. How do we make green? Some yellow and some blue. So I'll wash my brush off and add some yellow first. It's going to turn the grass kind of orangey. And then while that's still wet, I'll be dropping a little blue here and there. And then I'll see if it needs any adjustment. And it'll kind of turn a greenish color, but it's a very muted green. It's kind of an olive green. It's not like a kid bedroom green at all. It's like a barely noticeable little field of grass. Again, it's playing second fiddle to the suitcase, the hair, all those kinds of things. So we don't want to draw too much attention to it, unless you do. I mean, your grass could be pink for all I care. It's your painting. You can make it whatever you want. But that's a nice way to make natural, muted looking grass. You see how it reads as green? Even though it's very, very subtle. It reads as green because there's nowhere else in this whole painting where there's been a little addition of yellow or blue together. That's why it looks like a nice dull green. Very, very soft. Now, if I'm light years ahead of you, please don't panic. You're going to get the replay on this video, and watercolor is to be enjoyed, not rushed, honestly. So if that is your situation, keep going on yours. And do this at your own pace. For the suitcase, I'm going to start at that upper left corner. I'm going to take turns dipping into dark Payne's gray. And I mean dark. If you can see through it and it looks like a light blue, then get some more paint on your brush because it's too watery or something. There, that's a nice dark Payne's gray. The next thing I dip into is going to be ultramarine blue right next to it. They're going to interact with each other here because they're both wet. The next thing I dip into is probably going to be the burnt sienna. Why not? That's going to also interact. You see how all three puddles are next to each other? I didn't start on the opposite end of the suitcase. I'm keeping it all contained right here on the upper left corner of the suitcase. This is what they call keeping a wet edge. It is, I get to keep going down the suitcase and bringing it out a little bit farther and a little bit farther as I go. I'm going to even drop a little bit of my red in there. You can do that too if you'd like. A little interest. It'll still be dark red because we're using all dark colors. But now what I'm not going to do is go back and fix anything on that upper corner of the suitcase. I'm leaving that alone. It's already started to dry up there on the upper left corner of the suitcase. I'm not going back. I'm going to just continue adding more dark, rich color to the borders of my wet area and making them larger borders and larger borders. Taking turns dipping into ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, Payne's gray. Not really looking at my photo reference so much now. And I'm going slower around the border of where I drew this thing because, you know, I want to keep the paper dry around the suitcase so it has a nice sharp edge. I'm going right into her leg shadow. Drop some burnt sienna into that leg shadow. It's a nice sharp shadow. Her leg has dried now, so I can do that. It's all one shape. Dropping a little bit more brown into the shadows where her, not just brown though. I like the burnt sienna, or I mean the ultramarine blue and stuff. Payne's gray, whatever. It's all blended together here. Yeah, her leg shadows are going to be really cool. And I'm not making them very light. I'm making them pretty dark. Once I have those leg shadows in though, I'm going to leave them alone. That's the theme. I'm not going back down to the leg shadows once they're in. I'm not trying to be photorealistic with this suitcase. There's a lot more detail on the photo than I want to make on here. I'm going to simplify parts of it. Not going to make every button and dot. If this is your first experience with doing these types of painting, like I said, go slow. Don't rush it. It's not worth it to be like, oh no, she's on that part of the suitcase. I have to be too. No, you don't. So if part of that suitcase has begun to dry, my advice is leave it alone. Don't let it be like nitpicked anymore because it's already starting to granulate. It's starting to figure out where it wants to live. Using the same suitcase colors that we just used, you're going to actually fill in the bottom of that little triangle at the bottom of her dress, the shadow. Same deal. You can start with blue, add some burnt sienna. Some of this, some of that. Let the colors kind of mix around in the dark areas, but don't try to blend them so they're all the same. Like let there be some variety. On your handout, you will notice that it says to the very last step says finish both paintings with loosely applied colors. It is the same way we did the blue jeans is how you're going to do her shirt. And the same way as you do these little detail areas is how you can do her eyes, her mouth with the small brush. The little line under her mouth, you can do that with a small brush. Looking at your reference when needed. And you're like, well, it needs a little more oomph right there, a little bit punch right there. Feel free. Even if it wasn't a step that we covered in the class, you can keep going on this and make it your own. You've learned how to see the different colors, even in the dark areas, whether it's brown or blue. You'll notice we didn't use a lot of colors today. We only worked with really 5 colors. And that's really helpful in being able to see the nuances of what you're putting down. You don't have to use a lot of tubes of paint. You can, it's not wrong to, but you don't have to. Around the border of the lady with the suitcase, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want, you can do a when everything in this is dry, you could get the sky completely wet and drop in some blues, make some little swooshy clouds everywhere if you would like to, right up to the border. You could leave it white. You could paint it bright, anything that you want to. Maybe there's a green sky behind her or a yellow sky behind her. Or a plain old blue sky that's real watered down. Or maybe you just let it be the pencil mark. And with this one, You can come back in with your dark colors because the hair is dry. You could come in with some little almost calligraphic little leg marks in with the Payne's gray, and you could swoosh around and let it be like loose and playful like that. I sort of just took some Payne's gray and went around like that with that. It's very, very loosely done. I'm switching back to the kneeling artist. I'm going to put wet into wet all over her shirt. It's up to you. If you want that hard line right here that goes across the tops of her shoulders, if you want that to be a hard line, then just do half of the shirt at a time. Upper half first, lower half later. If you want it to be all kind of run together, then get the entire shirt wet. These are your choices. I'm just going to do the upper half first. And then when I drop color into it, I'm going to peek over here at my reference and see what there is. I'm going to drop some ultramarine blue in the shoulder area. Swish, swish. And a nice big lob of ultramarine blue across her back, her upper shoulder. And let that be what it is. And in other areas of her shirt, it looks like we have a little purple here and there. So I'm going to just mix a little bit of my own purple using my red that I'm already using. And I'll just kind of lightly almost draw some purple in here and there. Trying to leave some of the white of the paper, just plain old white, because I want to see what that looks like when it's dry. It does travel. I think I'll make her have purple socks, kind of a light purple, grayish. So I'll draw those in. And I'm going to touch the sock with a paper towel to lift up some of it so it's a little bit lighter. I'm going to do the lower half of her shirt now, even though the upper half of the shirt is still wet, because I think that will add some interesting blooms and things like that. So here I go. I'm going to just take purple paint and paint the lower half of her shirt. Since I don't have purple paint, I'm going to mix my purple right here first, kind of on the dark side. And I will see what happens. Yeah, that's nice and dark. Wherever it touches what I just did, it's going to want to bloom upward. And that's fine. I'm going to let it. Because a tie-dye looking shirt like this doesn't have any rules attached to it. Whereas if you're painting hair around a face, you probably don't want those to bleed together. Or maybe you do. I'm going to switch to my very small brush to go around her thumb. I'm going to drop in more purple and even some Payne's gray, the blackish color, into this wet purple part of her shirt because I want there to be contrast in this painting. There, now she's going to have some shadow color wherever I just dropped that Payne's gray in. And remember, it's going to dry lighter. So all these very rich darks that I just did will be a little lighter when it's dry. Should we give her some purple glasses? I think we should. All right, I'm just going to make a little sliver of purple on her glasses. In her eye color, because she's looking down. That's what I got for that. I might lift out some of the dark color around her thumb. I think I got a little too dark there. So I'm going to lift with my paper towel loosely. Oh, I kind of like that. Yeah, I like that. So as you're finishing this up, I mean, you can take a break. You can continue on it tomorrow. If you're watching the recording, you can hit pause in between steps or whatever you want to do. But just use the brush sizes that make the most sense for whatever part you're going to be working on along the process. Letting things flow, even as you move things and put things down. You'll have to make those decisions of, is moving this painting going to be detrimental to what I want to do, or is it going to be part of the fun? Because, you know, you can see the back of her purple shirt is flowing around as I tilt it and move it a little bit. It is really granulating beautifully. You can see all of that variety in there. This is a very good example of granulating color in the texture of this shirt. And that's something that you cannot get by brushing and brushing and brushing and brushing. You have to just put it down and leave it alone. All right. Well, you guys have a lot of fun continuing this painting. I'm going to just do a little bit of burnt sienna plus Payne's gray on her hair stripes, in case you wanted to see that. Little hair stripes here, goes down toward her face. Make it what you want. It doesn't have to be the way I'm doing it. In the reference, her hair is really dark around her face, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it is something that I'm leaving the lines because I know her shirt is still wet right there. So I chose to stop the dark shadows of her hair a little before it touches the blue of her shirt since it's wet. And I really like that. And I can always soften it and move things around later on with it if I want to. But trying to let watercolor be watercolor means in part letting the shapes of your brushes be obvious. Like it looks like a paintbrush was here. That's a good thing. So you can experiment with these shadows and do whatever it is that you want to do. I'm right now making this little gray side of the bucket right there. I might make these handles the same color, even though in our reference they weren't even done, but that looks kind of cool. There's some brown in the upper part of that shadow that I didn't plan on that I really like. I painted a little bit of a dark area around the brush that she's holding for the tip for the bristle. And if you want to do something really loose and dry brushy, you can I'm just going to take my brush and start on the bottom of this canvas that she's got and just kind of slide up and let it go. That's, you don't have to do it that way. You can do whatever you want there on that canvas or wall or whatever she's painting on. That's just what I felt like doing. She's kneeling on a very golden floor. So this you can see is wet into wet. Well, after her jeans are dry, you would paint the whole floor like this gold orangey color, and you would drop in a little red here and a little red there if you wanted to do that same treatment. Using your clear water, because red is kind of yellow is kind of a finicky color. If there's anything in it, it'll not be yellow anymore, basically. And I'm going to paint very loosely that floor that she's sitting on right now. I'm not even going to go all the way up to things like this bucket right here. If I touch that bucket, the shadow will bleed down into the yellow. That could look kind of cool. I'm going to try it because it's still wet. I'm going to add a touch of red here and there into those colors just to see what they'll do. I left more white of the paper showing than in the original. Kind of adds some sparkle when you leave some of the paper plain old white. Ironically enough, that's the part people like the best too, the part you didn't even touch. Like, oh, it's so pretty. Well, It's just paper. I didn't touch it. And feel free to keep going and go back and forth with your references, find out how detailed or not detailed you want things to be. Add your own drops of color in that are different than the ones I used, if you'd like to. Are there any questions before we end our workshop? I don't expect anybody to be completely done with yours. But are there questions before we log off?
Nope.
Because these things take time. The application of the figure and flow part, especially clothing, does not take very long to swish into place. It's all the other stuff that takes a while, isn't it? Letting things dry, planning where you want to drop things next, mixing the colors. All of that is what takes some time with watercolor. But it has a real freshness and boldness that is very fun to watch unfold. All right. I'm going to switch my video back to my face. And I hope that you all had a great time today. Good. It is definitely, watercolor is really like no other medium out there. If you water down acrylics as a paint, you'll get similar results, but not the same. Watercolor has its own special category in the arsenal of art supplies that exist out there.
For sure.
It really is. Yeah. So as these dry, feel free to go back in and add things. Like I said, if you want to put a whole flood of brand new clear water over the entire dry dress, make it all a puddle again. You can swish in other things if you'd like to. The more paint you add, the darker the whole overall dress will get. Same with anything. If it helps to think of watercolor as like stained glass, the more layers you have, the darker it gets because it's transparent. So, yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank
It
you.
was fun. Yeah, working with you guys. Awesome. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day.
You
I'll
too.
see you later.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.